Welcome back. Happy Monday. Go Gadget Focus. Piece of I don't know. Hit the like button. It's good to see you. Thanks for Friday off. Hit the like button. Welcome back to the Funker Show. Still don't know. But I'm happy to be here. Boo! Yeah, boo that guy off stage. How we doing, guys? It's good to see you. Drop in the chat. Let me know where you guys are chiming in from. We got a good show tonight. Thanks for Friday off. I appreciate it. Every once in a while, I just need to kick back. I spent the evening on the couch with the wife, planning out a video to film, shoot, then shoot again, and edit over the weekend. That's been posted to the website. You guys will be able to see that. Technically, we don't have a sponsor for tonight, but it was for Armored Republic. Go check that video out. I'm pretty proud of it. You know, spent all weekend on it. It's good to see you though. Fucking, what is going on with the? I don't know what's going on with my focus. I might need to take the Christmas tree down. Oh my goodness, Philly, welcome in. Central Florida, what's up? Hello. Let's see if that fixes the problem. I don't know. We'll figure it out over time. We got a good show tonight. Before I get to what exactly we're going to cover in tonight's show, I want to announce a very special guest for Wednesday night. On Wednesday night, I had a call just 45 minutes ago or so with Svatove. So I announced last Wednesday that we were going to have a special guest here very soon, and we will. So Svatove will be joining us on Wednesday. I'm not sure for how long. We intend to have a discussion. Ask questions. They'll ask questions of us. It's just a back and forth. It's not an interview. It's really about just he and I to connect over his experiences. I've got tons of questions for him. If you're not familiar with Svatove, we'll have all the links and stuff for you guys to go and check out his stuff. But he's fought with the Kurds. He fought with the Ukrainians as a part of the International Foreign Legion. And I'm sure you guys will have questions too. So we'll end up doing a short question and answer session where you guys can send along your questions. We, of course, won't be able to get to all of them because of, how many of you are so engaged in the chat. But I didn't have a whole lot of details on that. But I did have I had a video chat with him today. Got to, meet him for the first time. Really pleasant human being. Loved it. How we doing, guys? What's going on? Svatove is a beast. Yep. And we've been posting his stuff to the website now for quite a while. And when we post things to the website, which he is well aware of, we talked about it, you guys should understand that it is enabling his YouTube channel because we are embedding the YouTube video. You guys ready to get started for tonight? We're going to talk about $275 million to Ukraine. We're going to talk about $1 million worth of equipment, I should say. Too often are these DoD releases considered to be a blank check or a check for the value of $275 million. Sounds like the wife's home and my dog is barking. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about mobilized Russian equipment, kind of in two ways. One more comical than the other, though both being somewhat comical from a supply perspective. We're going to talk about bridges in Melitopol, and we're also going to see some Gulf War footage tonight. As I continue to reiterate, we cover situations, context, war across the world, not just Ukraine. Ukraine is just what we've covered the most on this show. How we doing? Welcome back. Is Svatove fighting in Ukraine? No, he has returned to the United States. We'll be talking, quite a bit about his trips. I do understand that he is returning, but we'll dive much further down into that. 250 million is pennies compared to our nearly 1 trillion annual. Yep. We're actually going to talk about that right now. Let's dive into $275 million in additional assistance for Ukraine. This is a presidential drawdown package. Can I fix this overlay? This has been bothering me a whole lot. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to do it live. Let's do this. Then let's slide me over like that. And then let's do this. That's better. Anyway, $275 million in a presidential drawdown. The major differentiation between presidential drawdown and Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative. I will continue to say this every time. I know we've got a lot of, returning community members that hear me say it all the time. Remember, there could always be somebody new in the chat, and we could help correct a poor or misunderstanding relative to these security assistance packages. The difference between Presidential Drawdown and Ukraine's Security Assistance Initiative is ultimately where it comes from. Presidential Drawdown, this instance, comes from current stock. Ukraine's Security Assistance Initiative is essentially taking out contracts with industry on behalf of Ukraine. So a lot of the HIMARS deliveries were Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, where we took out a contract for the building of HIMARS to be sent to Ukraine. This is a presidential drawdown package. Some key notes for this. United States has committed $20 billion in security assistance to Ukraine since the beginning of the Biden administration. We cover this every time. Since 2014, that's been $22.1 billion and more than $19.3 billion since the beginning of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Let's walk top to bottom here. Some additional GMLRS. I'm waiting for the day that we see ATACMS on this list, the Army Tactical Missile System. At a very fundamental level, we're going to take that once and if ATACMS is provided, it would take the HIMARS capability from approximately, 70 kilometers out to 300 kilometers, something along those lines. I've done a whole video on that before. An additional 80,000 155 artillery rounds, a la the thumbnail for tonight's live stream. Counter unmanned, counter UAS, right? Now, I don't exactly know what this is. There's a lot of options here, but I'm willing to bet these are the electronic jamming guns that you see. Look like a really futuristic RoboCop kind of gun that you'll see both Ukrainians and Russians using. Counter-air defense, Humvees, ambulances, medical, etc. 150 generators. Those are going to be huge, especially through the winter. And quote-unquote field equipment. Now, what you can also always do is check the Ukraine fact sheet, which I love doing. The fact sheet, helps you understand from a United States security assistance perspective how much has been provided to date. Okay. So that is the $250 million of security assistance for Ukraine that was announced on Friday. And given that we didn't go live Friday, I figured we would cover it here. Checking in on the support and on the chat. Made in USA, thanks for the $2. Toric Roma, thank you for the $5. Ronnie, what's the biggest, this was from the last stream, more you learn something, the more you realize you don't know the topic you've had. So if I recall your clarity on the question in the other stream, and I did want to go back and cover this, your question is essentially saying, what is something that you began to dip your toes into, and the more you dipped your toes into it, the more you peeled back the onion and understood you didn't know anything. And I would say that's the Eastern European situation, right? The more you peel it back, thinking that you understand from a simplistic perspective Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the more questions you end up having. Right. Something that's not questionable is what Russia has done since its invasion. But when you start to understand, the conditions that have been set over time, you really just end up in an endless rabbit hole of analysis of second guessing, if you will. Checking in from Connecticut. Welcome in. Tap on the like button for me. If we say ATACMS, it'll probably be next year. Yeah, hopefully. Again, I'm a proponent of providing a more surgical capability rather than just blanket arms, if you will. I'm also a supporter of defensive posture munition, defensive capabilities. Things like Patriots, the Phalanx system, which most people know as CRAM. I'm a big fan of sending those. Those defensive capabilities that Ukraine could use to defend its population centers. But when it comes to precision weapons, like ATACMS, like GMLRS and HIMARS, and like the Excalibur, I'm also a fan of that. Reduces collateral, makes Ukraine more effective, and hopefully brings a faster end to the war. Hello from Ontario. Welcome in from Ontario. Hey, Ronnie, loving my Ghost of Kyiv shirt. Good, man. Hell yeah. So we just took a look at the $275 million in security assistance to Ukraine, but Russia is also receiving care packages. All right, let's take a look at a care package from Russia. We're going to watch a video here. Well, a Russian care package that Russians received, presumably from, probably locals or something. I don't know where they got it from, but they should send it back.
Гуманитарку отправил. Тут крема, руки мыть. Можно на хлеб, наверное, мазать, кушать. Тут коробка целая. Мыло.
Это ладно, мыло.
Мыло, ладно, но. И тоже крема шахтерские, коробка.
Это вот это покажи. Вот это вообще.
И рубашки нам тут носить.
На выход.
Вот так вот. И все это. Пчелинский район. Село Имангулово. Вот и монгольский сельсовет гуманитарку отправил.
I want to point out a couple things here.
Крема.
All right. So, hand cream. Okay. My first thought is, yeah, stay moisturized, dudes.
Руки мыть.
And then he said, perhaps could be spread on bread. He's being sarcastic, right? He has to be sarcastic. But I actually tweeted about that, and I got a series of follow-ups. Like, you realize he's being sarcastic, right? Like, of course. Okay, anyway. But then again, I thought about it a second time. I have no idea if he's being sarcastic. None whatsoever. Also, I can tell you that the value of lotion, when deployed in any instance, is extremely high. For reasons that we just probably shouldn't talk about here.
Можно на хлеб, наверное, мазать, кушать.
But then, shirts for going out. It's a good thing they're well equipped for a night out on the town. This isn't representative of, the equipment that Russians have right now. Granted, to a certain extent, I guess it kind of is. I just thought this was a somewhat humorous take on a care package that was sent to Russians. I wouldn't feed my dog that rubbish. Hand cream for the boys. This man could just literally be that hungry. Well, if he's got bread, just eat the bread. Right? He's probably not going to put it on the bread, guys. Let's bring it back up. All right, I've got one video here. Not one video. We've got a ton of footage to go through tonight. But I've got one that I kind of wanted to spend a little bit of time on. Okay? And we're in back-to-back videos here. You're going to see kind of two extremes. The very first one is, for some reason, DudePerfect has made their way into Ukraine. Here's the problem with this video. The initial report said that it was a Russian drone dropping it on Ukrainians. What I have yet to see from Russian footage is the Oscar Wilde meme. And you'll understand what I mean at the end of this. So that leads to believe that there's a little bit of a discrepancy as to who's flying the drone and who's on the receiving end of it. I'll leave it up to you guys to tell me.
Elle sort de son lit, tellement sûre d'elle. La scène, la scène, la scène, tellement jolie, elle m'ensorcelle. La scène, la scène, la scène.
All right, I'm going to kill the music now since that's totally going to be copywritten, and we're going to watch that one more time. So what you're watching is, quite simply a drone flying up to a chimney for an underground bunker and dropping an F1 hand grenade down the chimney. All right, coming back up. Now, again, there's a little bit of back and forth on who exactly we're watching here. That, the Office meme or the Oscar Wilde meme there at the end. That's something Ukraine has done quite a bit. They work to include memes in a lot of their footage. Really playing the information space is what that's doing. Russia, much, much less so. Although the original report of this said that it's a Russian drone dropping that munition down, or the F1 grenade, I should say, down the chimney. I'm not entirely sold on that. But that is what the original report said. That's skill. That was. Yeah. Absolutely. The use of drones to a certain extent is novel, right? Not the use of drones, not in what you just saw. The use of drones as legitimate forward observers, calling back artillery and grid locations. In my mind, that's really an advancement in TTPs. We've seen the use of drones, quadcopters, things like that since early ISIS. They were dropping, bricks of plastic explosive from quadcopters. So Ukraine and Russia continuing to do that is somewhat on par. However, the amount of footage that we've now seen, and I see a lot of questions about this in comments, especially on the recent Excalibur video that I did. How can a drone be used to report back coordinates? Well, these DJI commercial drones are actually extremely capable when it comes to GPS. And the reason is they're very small drones, and they want you to be able to find the $2,000 drone if you, as a drone operator, lose it. That same capability, from a GPS perspective, to find the drone can also be used to report back or relay coordinates. So from a forward observer perspective, you've essentially removed the human necessity of being able to report back exact locations on things. And that in and of itself is novel. Flying drones, exploding into things itself to a certain extent is novel. We're going to see some footage coming up next on drones being produced by Russia that supposedly have the ability to be mass produced. We're about to pull out the 10-point banana scale, okay? From a scale of 1 to 10, how effective is this weapon system? 0 being not effective at all, 10 bananas being extremely effective. Video's coming up for you guys now. One more time. Somebody said 10 bananas. I would submit this as evidence against your 10 bananas. I'd give it the obligatory 2 out of 10 bananas. But if you guys would like my favorite comment that I've seen on the website so far this week, here it is. A strong Taco Bell fart would do more damage to that thing. Congratulations to gearhounds. I almost pissed myself laughing reading this. All right, coming up. 2 for accuracy, but nothing for effectiveness. Okay. Oh, in the comment below, it is just as good. Good job, Russia. You found a new way to clear snow from a vehicle. I hate using my snow brush. Can I borrow the drone? It's calling for an inch of snow tonight. Yeah, it doesn't seem very effective. Against personnel, probably, but their demonstration there didn't do it a whole lot of justice. That's got to be a troll. I'm calling what the thing said. It was a test of a drone. From a capabilities perspective, the drone supposedly has a 5-kilometer range and carries a 1-kilogram explosive payload, right? And can be mass produced. That's an important distinction here. I shouldn't say distinction. That's an important note, right? So the ability to mass produce these, use them in large quantities is itself a capability, but the demonstration of a single drone against, what was that, a BTR? Yeah, that leaves quite a bit to be desired. Slow enough to hit it with a baseball bat. I'm just imagining somebody out there with a baseball bat. Oh, I love the comments section. All right. Let's move on. So we're going to start our, kind of our regular spread of footage here. And we're going to begin with some Russian perspective footage of either an AGS-17 or an AGS-30 being used on Ukrainian positions. I'm going to point out a couple things in this video. Namely, it does appear as though you're watching a tree line getting blown up, but there is personnel in this tree line, and I'll show you that as we come up on the video here. So orient yourself center right where my mouse, which you can probably barely see. I do have my mouse enlarged, but for some reason the capture card isn't picking that up. Orient your eyes here, and you'll see some slight movement of personnel. So there are absolutely people in the tree line. Now, the AGS-17 and AGS-30 are essentially the counterparts to the American Mark 19 automatic grenade launcher. So essentially, this is a belt-fed system that just sends a whole lot of explosive hate into one direction. And I'm kind of going to skip forward a little bit here and watch some footage from the east of Ukrainians using an American Mark 19. That video is coming up for you guys now. Even though I had this for later in the show, from here, you guys know I break it down into the different fronts of the war that's going on right now. So I'm pulling this one from the footage near Bakhmut. But I wanted to provide a little bit of perspective. I don't have footage on the receiving end of this. We have seen it in the past, though, and it is on the website. Check this out. Let's watch that again.
Давай пятерочку.
Готовый?
Да. И еще троечку. И еще троечку. И еще нахуй.
If you listen, and you have to be intent on listening past what you're seeing in front of you, you can hear the impacts. There they are. Yeah. All right. So again, I skipped forward a little bit there. The first video, like I said, that we watched was either an AGS-17 or an AGS-30 being used. Second video was an American Mark 19, Russia and Ukraine specifically. This next one, you got to give credit where it's due, guys. We're in our unknown location footage section here. What you're going to see is a Russian Su-25 Frogfoot being landed with no landing gear. The plane's crippled for some reason, or he forgot to put the landing gear down. I'm not sure which, but it's a hell of a landing. I was curious, feed issue or accuracy? Holding the top cover down is a feed issue. Might have a faulty latch. Now, something that's notable here for me is a general lack of ground support personnel. Right? Now, there's a possibility and a chance that they could be behind our cameraman. I mean, there's like a vehicle or something there. But I've seen similar videos of, you know, pilots having to land in some kind of an odd circumstance where the runway is, you could see people all over the place just ready to jump on and help. You don't see a whole lot of support structure here. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Now, somebody mentioned, I saw it in the chat, that it was smoking. It is a little bit up there, yeah. But we don't know what happened to it. Malfunction or, you know, AAA fire. Not sure. Mark 19 versus AGS 17. I'm picking the Mark 19 every day, every time. Probably normally smokes. All right, let's bring it up. This next one, wrong button. This next one's actually super interesting watch. We've got a Ukrainian marksman, dare I say sniper, in his hide. When he begins to receive indirect fire and has to relocate. This one's a little bit of a clincher.
Ой, я СПГ бачу, откуда хуяри їхні.
Достанеш?
Кілометра 200 десь.
А координати можеш мені сказати, я тобі по карті покажу?
Із-за... Там у мене є карта. Із-за групи деревьев оттуда десь красний огонек вилетів.
Вот, ответь мусор.
Ой, бать. Спалились, сука. Підарас.
О, нормально всі?
Та вроді. Короче, буду со своєї, блядь, бачить. Со всіх сторон мене, нахуй, підари.
Це, блядь, як ті, блядь, знаєш?
Таракани, нахуй.
Таракани, нахуй, да.
Блядство. Блядь, пидорасы, птуром по мне въебал. Да.
I didn't know we had this many marksmen in the chat.
Нормально. Где он, пидор ебаный, сидит, сука? Ебать, я его, сука, челдон видел, нахуй, ну не знаю, попал, не попал.
Где он?
За шифером сидел.
Где именно?
Racial consciousness, you win the internet today. Everyone with an LPVO on their AR who shoots paper at 100 yards thinks they're a sniper. So what most people in the chat are talking about is the general common or understood practice of firing from way inside the building so you don't essentially stick the rifle out and make yourself more visible. It's really going to be context dependent and situational. There have been plenty of, you know, actual snipers that have talked about that before. In not every instance can you find a perfect hide way inside of a building. In, you know, his instance, I have no idea what was behind him. But let's move on. All right. Here. I don't have any words for this one. I never thought that there would be a day that Josh would reach out to me and tell me that it was now possible to do a search on the website for the words Falcon Punch, and it would come up with combat footage. But that day is today. Well, technically it was Friday. Here you are. Here are Russians in trenches. Falcon Punch. So let me, it gets me every time I watch. Let me describe what's going on here, all right? Because I know it was fast. I'm going to turn the music down a little bit. So a drone dropped munition lands right in front of their foxhole. Homie on the left starts basically just engaging into the air. Homie on the right didn't appreciate that and gives him probably the weakest right cross. All right, come back up. Josh dropped in the chat on Friday and was like, "You can now search the website for Falcon Punch," and I immediately knew it was going to be something ridiculous. I don't think I expected that though. Good music? Yeah, I don't think that one's copywritten either, so I don't think I'll have too many issues with that. It's not because of brass. No, it's not. He just, started shooting up in the air, and his comrade didn't like that. This next one's actually really interesting. We've talked about wanting to see the effect on target of the lofted rocket tactic that we've seen quite a bit from both Ukraine and from Russia. If you're unfamiliar with what I'm speaking to, we see a lot of footage of Russian and Ukrainian helos raising their nose on a low approach to fire unguided rockets. But what we don't often get a chance to see is their actual impact on target or their impact on something. We finally have footage that shows us just how ineffective, generally speaking, this technique is. We're going to walk through this one as well. We're still in our unknown location footage for the night. We'll be getting into footage from near Bakhmut, and we've got some Svatove footage and some Crimea footage. We've got quite a bit to get through tonight. This one's coming up for you now. This is a Russian helo. I don't have a great location for it. I'm sure somebody probably does out there. It's coming up for you now. I'm going to keep the music down here. All right, so there you see the launch. He's also popping flares. Drone's going to pan here, and you'll see the impact right in this area, if I recall. There's the first. There's the second. First, second. I think third maybe out here. Let's try and get that again kind of in sequence. All right, so there's the launch, the lofted launch. And impacts are going to be out here to the left. Seems like a complete waste of time. Yes and no, right? So what you're ultimately doing is preserving the aircraft. So the reason that both Ukrainians and Russians, what we just watched was Russians, but we see a lot of that from both sides. What you're ultimately doing is keeping your aircraft outside of air defense range, of manpad range. Flying low and then ultimately, raking the nose up to allow those rockets to reach the maximum range that they're capable. From an accuracy perspective, extremely ineffective. But from a preservation of air power perspective, it's very effective. And they're unguided rockets. These aren't smart bombs. These aren't things that probably cost much more than a couple $1,000s. Don't take that with a grain of salt. I have no idea. I haven't looked into that far. But this is not something where you would theoretically have millions and millions of dollars invested on these munitions that they're firing. Now, from an obvious perspective, though, from both sides doing this, given the accuracy shortfalls of it, if Ukraine launches that, for instance, towards a population center, doing their best to target, Russian positions, there's always the possibility that's going to fall in a population center. And the same thing applies here to Russia. I've talked about this being kind of not worth the squeeze before based on the risks associated with it, but it does protect your air power. Just checking through the chat here. I also want to check in on some of the support that's coming across. Thank you guys for it. My hair's a little wild tonight. Indio, thank you for the $5. When you think NATO will be in direct contact with the Russian Federation and the Wagner Group? I don't think that ends up happening ultimately unless there becomes some kind of a divisive change in the situation. If either Ukraine or Russia severely escalates, and when I say severely, Ukraine has the capability to reach into Russia's pocket. So if Russia ends up escalating beyond what it's currently doing, that's when I can see NATO potentially beginning to step in to provide air cover, things along those lines. I've talked before about the necessity to provide over Ukraine's population centers, since those cities, metropolitan areas, are being targeted quite a bit. They continue to be. Critical infrastructure continues to be targeted. I talked about the importance and necessity of providing Ukraine the means to protect its skies over at least its population centers. Where it starts to get really muddy, even if there was a call early on to close the skies, ultimately what NATO would end up having to do is engage ground targets, thus putting NATO in direct conflict with Russia. So you can't just close the skies. You then have to enforce that. And by enforcing that, you can't fly unless there's no threat to you. Seeing the ebb and flow of rhetoric coming from Russia, they continuously ramp that rhetoric, the threats. They'll mention things like our nuclear capability, and then they'll walk that back. They'll mention, our allies, and then they'll walk that back, most notably and often Belarus. It's difficult to see a point where NATO gets direct involved if things continue to go the way they currently are. If there's an escalation, I can see that changing. But the situation in my mind is so dynamic. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know who might decide that today's the day that we're going to try and take divisive action to turn the tide of the war. If that's Russia, they're kind of backed into a corner right now. That's when things might change. I don't know. I don't think many people know. Get you some. Thanks for the 5. Did Ukraine ever get those sick revolver drones from Taiwan? They sure did. Yes, they did. Those things are pretty dope. Those are awesome. I have yet to see footage of them, but we had a video that showed the capabilities of those. I wonder if I can pull that up at some point. That'd be good to go back through. This next one, so I told you we were going to review some mobilized Russian kit. And a lot of reports indicated that mobilized Russians were being, to some extent sent to the front line without a whole lot of kit. Russians themselves reported it. It's reported all around Western media. So, of course, if we say it, then suddenly we become a parrot for Western media. But when it's all coming from, on-ground sources, that's just become the reality. Russia is also beginning to blame local provinces for a lot of the poor equipment that mobilized Russians have in Ukraine. What we're going to see here, discretion advised, there is a dead body in this. But what we're going to see here is a med kit that a Ukrainian is going through that was created in 2022, right? So this is new and was provided to this mobilized Russian soldier. Take a look at the lack of equipment that these, mobilized Russians have on them from a medical perspective.
Так как он находится, вон он лежит, пидорас.
Ну, собственно говоря, аптечка представляет собой что-то похожее на израильский бандаж, типа косынки.
Но это не израильский бандаж.
Не израильский бандаж. Вот такой вот альтернативный жгут. Не турникет, жгут, как в 41-м. И
это памятка.
со всякими советами.
Укажи себе помощь.
Да.
Окажи себе помощь.
Сакцентировать внимание, что партия выпущена, производитель какой-то там, Санкт-Петербург, 22 год. То есть это вот аптечки, выпущенные именно для мобилизованных, и они вот настолько как бы нищебродские, скажем так.
Мобики, радуйтесь.
Аптечки для мобилизованных.
Okay, so let me kind of provide a little bit of gravity to this. So they're saying that this isn't a tourniquet, but to me it looks a whole lot like an S-mark. S-mark is very common, tourniquet that you see in Russian kit. Quite a bit different than what you'd be familiar with as like a Cat 3 tourniquet. And essentially what it is it's elastic. It allows you to stretch it over, over an appendage to essentially cut the flow like a tourniquet. But what they're saying in the video, and it's too low quality for me to see, is that it's not a tourniquet, it's actually just a band. Now, there would be a way to connect that together with almost like a button and snap if it was an S-mark. And I just can't tell, based on the quality of the video, whether or not that's actually the case.
Санкт-Петербург, 22 год. То есть это вот аптечки, выпущенные именно для мобилизованных, и они вот настолько как бы нищебродские, скажем так.
Мобики, радуйтесь.
Как-то вот так вот.
There's a comment in the chat that I'd like to actually cover or focus on a little bit here. That's been stripped out before it made its way to the front line. That's an even bigger problem, right? Why would you do that? So, the kit looks like it's more or less full. Like, it's not going to hold a lot of gear. That's not a large pouch that he's holding there. So, him pulling out those two items, that tourniquet's huge. Tourniquet. So, if it was stripped out by somebody before it ended up making its way, then you've got an entirely separate problem with, your supply chain. So, I don't think that's like any kind of a justification for saying that they should theoretically be properly equipped. I think that's actually the contents of that. I do. A single bandage and an elastic tourniquet. Coming up. These Russian troops, I see why you guys call them conscripts or draftees. It's not good for them in the perspective we see here. Is a medkit Russian or Ukrainian? That's Russian. That's a Russian mobilized soldiers medkit with a build date of 2022 on it. So that was made this year. So it's not something old. Just checking in on the chat here. I forgot the tampons. So there's a lot of tampon comments. If you guys aren't tracking what that's about, when Russia initially announced the mobilization, there was a video that was released of them still in a barracks environment where I guess one of their superiors was saying, we don't have any more equipment to give you. You need to acquire some of your own from a medical perspective, including tampons. All right, let's move on. So we are closed out on our unknown location footage for the night. We're going to move on to our location-specific footage, and we're going to be starting with Bakhmut. So Bakhmut, I want to head to a map. You know which one I'm going to, understandingwar.org. And most of you guys should know why. Pulling up that map for you right now. Here is the current Institute for the Study of War map. I'm going to kill the music here and take you guys to Bakhmut. We are going to see quite a bit of footage tonight, 2 or 3 at least, of the Kreminna-Svatove line, which I've talked about before, being heavily contested. There has been quite a bit of claimed Russian advance in and around Kreminna. We'll get to that here in just a little bit, as well as some footage from Bakhmut. Stand by. I'm all turned around here. Avdiivka. Why am I turned around? Here, let's make this easier. There we are. That was too low. Bakhmut still heavily contested, and I mean heavily. The majority of the footage that we're receiving and we're seeing is coming from Bakhmut, from Bakhmutsky. We're starting to see, like I said, some footage from the Kreminna-Svatove line. Very little coming out of Kherson in the south. But just to orient you to what the current situation looks like, blue are Ukrainian counteroffensives or ground that Ukraine has taken back from Russia. And yellow are claimed Russian advances that the Institute for the Study of War can't validate just yet. Now, with Bakhmut, you'll note that Russia still hasn't been able to achieve any kind of a hold on 513, a major G-lock for Ukraine, as well as 504. These are two that are that ISW continues to cite as major supply lines for Bakhmut. And as long as these remain free and clear, then Ukraine can continue to supply their troops in Bakhmut. This is one of those instances where a lot of people are talking about whether or not Bakhmut is really, from a tactical significance perspective, worth it. A lot of people are dying, Ukrainians and Russians in Bakhmut. From a scale perspective, I would say quite a bit more Russians are dying just based on the map. Were it the other way around, based on the amount of combat power Russia is aligning against Bakhmut, you would see more ground taken. For what purpose? Earlier this month, ISW released a report that essentially said, and these are their words, not mine, that Russia has yet to really learn from its mistakes in, focusing too heavily on tactically insignificant gains. And I can't fully understand why Bakhmut would be tactically significant. Then again, I don't claim to have the mind of a strategist. Let me know in the comments if you guys have any idea why Russia would be focusing so heavily on Bakhmut. Let's jump into the footage, though. Wrong button. I'll figure out how to use all my shit one day. Oop, beep. The very first one is we reported on a Wagner helo that had gone down. We now have footage of that. This took place on October 31st near Bakhmut.
вертолета, изнутри вертолета посмотрели, что там осталось, если не осталось. Если там зола, то пусть золы в мешок не гребут там лопатками. Вот. Не знаю. Когда видите, что он взял какой-нибудь пакет или мешок, и из вертолета там что осталось, что на нагрелку, верно? Да, идентифицировать не получится, то пусть просто золы в мешок этот соберет пару ведер. И это нужно, чтобы сделал не меньше, а пусть он кого-нибудь отправит. Я принял.
All right, one more time on this one.
Чтобы то, что мы с ним обсуждали по поводу вертолета, чтобы пару карандашей взяли пакет или мешок и с вертолета, изнутри вертолета посмотрели, что там осталось, если не осталось. Если там зола, то пусть золы в мешок нагребут там лопатками. Вот. Не знаю. Когда видите, что он взял какой-нибудь пакет или мешок, и из вертолета там что осталось, туда нагрел, верно? Да, идентифицировать не получится, то пусть просто золы в мешок этот соберет пару ведер. И это нужно, чтобы сделал не меньше, а пусть он кого-нибудь отправит. Я принял.
All right, again, that is a Wagner chopper that was taken down near Bakhmut. The next one that we're going to see is some Ukrainian perspective footage. A Ukrainian soldier returning to a burning vehicle, reportedly under fire. We can't clearly identify any fire on the video, but the original report stated that a Ukrainian returned to a vehicle that was hit to recover a wounded soldier, and he did so under fire. This video is coming up for you guys now. Once again, near Bakhmut. I'm going to go full screen on this one.
Шквальний вогонь. Автівка горить, 3 бійця евакуювалися, 4-й самотужки пробує збити полум'я свого одягу, але лежить нерухомий. Очевидно, поранення не дозволяє йому, і вогонь не дозволяє йому рухатися. Ось 3 козака в безпечному місці. Козак прямо під вогнем робить наступне.
Hey, Funker's in the chat, everybody.
Надання першої допомоги і врятування свого побратима – то є національна особливість українського воїна. Слава тобі, вояче! Очевидно, що поранений самотужки не може вибратися. Це свідчить про тяжкість його поранень. Справляється з евакуацією свого пораненого бойового товариша.
All right. Coming back up. Now, again, the original report for that was, we do know that those were Ukrainians that had returned to a vehicle that was hit to recover a wounded comrade. And the original report said that they had done so under heavy fire. Just providing you the context on that one. Howdy, dudes. What's up, man? It's good to see you. How's your chickens? That's all he does anymore is raises chickens. All right, so we've got... we're moving on to Svatove. As I had just pulled up earlier, that Svatove Crimea front that I've really been waiting based on the way the map has played out here. I've been waiting to see more footage from here. The very first one we're going to take a look at is near Svatove up in the north, and this is going to be the TOS 1A hitting Ukrainian positions. Every time I see the TOS 1A and the impacts of those thermobaric munitions, it's just, it's a scary system. Check this out. There's no sound to this video, guys. Nasty stuff. It really is. Really is. I have a very fundamental understanding of the way this system works. My understanding is it's a fuel mixture that essentially burns all the air around it. All right. Let's come back up. Scary as hell. Yeah, absolutely. See the shockwave off of the... Yeah. Terrifying. Now, we're going to see some Russian perspective footage once again near Svatove. You're going to see a Ukrainian tank hitting a AT mine. And this is actually... So we've seen a couple of these from a Russian perspective before. And what you always ask yourself is, how did they not see those mines? And if you blink, you'll miss them. But something that's important from a contextual perspective on this is visibility inside of T-series tanks is extremely poor. So you'll see, even from a Ukrainian perspective, that it's very difficult to spot these anti-tank mines, even when they're laid in a straight line across the road. You'll see what I mean here in just a second. Once again, coming from Svatove. See if you can spot the row of mines. Look right in front of the tank. You have to look pretty hard. There's a row of mines there. Now, when I first watched this, you'll see an impact over here to this side. And I'm not exactly sure what that is. I can't tell if the tank itself is firing. Let's slow it way down. We'll go to 25% speed. Turn the volume off on that. See if we can catch that main gun firing. It could be, to some extent coincidental. Anti-tank mine hits the tank. Gunner instinctively fires the cannon. Not sure. Tank round ignited. Okay. Mine triggered the tank round. Yeah. Sure. That would make sense. A tank sneeze. Tank misclick. Desk pop. All right, coming back up. That one's an interesting one to watch. But, there's always two sides to every coin, right? So we've seen footage like that of Russian T-series tanks, BMPs, etc., rolling right into that same array of mines, and across the internet, it's the same joke. Like, oh, how did they not see that? Visibility in those Soviet era armored vehicles, terrible. All right, let's move on to the next one. We've got a Russian position near Crimea. It's in a location that I'll show you here on the map in just a second that I can't pronounce. I'm really good at pronouncing stuff. Zhitivka. I don't know. That was terrible. It's coming up for you guys now. I'm going to show you the map first. Here's your map. So you've got Crimea to the south and this location. Full screen. Zhitlivka. I'm not sure. Here's the footage. This is a Russian position being destroyed by Ukrainian artillery. Where's the Leopard tanks? Any footage? No. Austin, excuse me. Thanks for the 12 months. Torek, thank you for the $5. Bakhmut is important to the Russians because some Russians said they were making gains, so they threw more troops at it. Sunk cost fallacy. That's actually a great point. You know, I saw a lot of comments in the chat. I've also seen some comments before about, you know, underground areas in the Bakhmut area that Russia supposedly wants. There are a lot of underground tunnel systems throughout, you know, former Soviet republics. There's a lot of them. So it's not foreign to me that there would be an underground tunnel complex near Bakhmut. I've also seen high ground footage, high ground comments. Russia wants it because it's the high ground. There's a real possibility that Russia's just, from a, you know, reason perspective, just looking for a win. Russia has lost a lot of ground over the last couple months. I mean, a lot of ground. What did somebody equated it to the size of Delaware? I want to say. I think it was Delaware. Whereas, you know, at a certain point in the war, Russia had taken ground all the way up to 20 kilometers from Kyiv. Sunk cost fallacy. Yep. All right, next one that we've got. An entry into the Turret Olympics. Once again, we're going to go back to the banana scale here. This is in Luhansk. A Russian T-80 is going to do its best in the Turret Olympics. 1 out of 10 bananas, 10 being a perfect score and 0 being no score. Coming up for you now. Copyright music. I think it's relative high ground, Reginald. All right, coming back up. I've seen a BMP-1 get a 10 out of 10 with a little help of a Ukrainian T-62. Solid 6.9, I gave it a 7. There was nothing to indicate that those tanks were occupied or moving. At least a 7? Yes, at least a 7 for style points, definitely. All right. Good hang time? Yeah. What is the longest hang time we saw? We saw something like 7 seconds on one of them. Yeah, that was a lot. Hello from Poland. Well, welcome in from Poland. Where is everybody chiming in from tonight? I know I asked you guys earlier today, but drop in the chat. Let me know where you're chiming in from. We love seeing how far and wide-reaching the Funker community is. We cover everything. Everything from the war in Ukraine, and we do our best to stay as objective as possible to it. Showing you the footage, right? We're showing you the footage that we find with the initial reports, right? As individuals, we have our biases, but from a platform perspective, we want you to see it raw. Now, every so often, we'll try and provide additional context in a video like we did on the Excalibur, the HIMARS video, the Su-25 video that we launched not too long ago. But by and large, we post this footage raw to our app. And the reason we do that is a lot of it is not safe for work. I'm going to give you guys a link for one at the very end that I can't show you here. I just can't. It's too nasty. These are the things that YouTube has determined not safe for its platform. That's why we have our own app available on iOS and on Android. Now, if you guys would like to take a look at that ad-free, watch without ads, we do have a way that you can support us directly while getting an ad-free watching experience or viewing experience, excuse me. And there's a link for that in the comments. You'll also find plenty of opportunities to select that over on the app. I'm missing everybody in chiming in where you're at. Birmingham, England, welcome in. Washington State, welcome. Canary Island, goodness. Detroit, Michigan. Rhode Island. Colorado. Transylvania. Are you okay? Spokane, Washington. Anybody else from Hawaii? Somerville, South Carolina. Australia. Danville. Oh, everywhere. Everywhere. Concord, Massachusetts. Melbourne, Australia. Welcome in. Welcome in, guys. Oh, my goodness. Chat's going crazy again. Let's turn the music back on. Why do we have, like, lame-o music tonight? There we go. Your mom's house. My mom's house? Oh, that's dope, dude. You're right down the road. Your mom's house. Oh, wow, there's a lot of folks there. Chicago, Southeast Texas. All right, let's move on to the next one. Thanks, guys, for chiming in. It's just so awesome to see how far and wide-reaching the Funker community is. How many people just want to see raw what's happening. I tried to provide as much commentary and context on this that is how it was reported, right? We don't have a specific area or place that we pull this footage. We don't pull it from CNN's website, right? We try and pull it as close to the original source as possible and provide that original context. Let's jump into the next one. Now, this one's a bit old. It was released on Friday, and when I say a bit old, I mean we didn't cover it Friday because I wasn't here. But we're going to see is somewhere in the east, somewhere along that Bakhmut line. Actually, I have a better location for that. 1 second. No, I don't have a better location than that. But this is coming up for you right now. What you're going to see are Russians essentially overextending and running smack dab into Ukrainian lines, then having to unask that AO post-haste. Coming up for you now. There is copywritten music on the back end of this, but it's overlaid with the combat sounds, so we're going to listen to it, and I'll have to cut it out at the end. Is this Russian? Correct. These are Russians that we're watching here. Now, I just want to pause for a second and talk a little bit about that explosion. Josh posted this originally. You guys know Josh well. And it states that this is a landmine, but to me it looks more like a backblast from an RPG. What do you guys think about that? Watch it again. You can see him kind of stand up shouldering that. Back blast. RPG. And I see a lot of comments. Why is it so green? Why is it so green? We're not a news site, right? So as we come across footage, we could come across footage of a firefight that took place, months and months ago. But if it's new footage to the platform, new footage to the page, we're not going to assume that you've seen it already. There are a lot of folks that might not be able to stay as in tune with what's happening. So yes, quite honestly, this is a lot of greenery. I've seen some comments on location that it's in the south near Kherson. To be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure where exactly this took place. But our focus and fundamental mission and goal is to document all this footage in one place. That's why we use the website for every stream. So every stream, I essentially, start with the website and go through the footage from around the world that we've seen. Here, coming up, we're going to see some non-Ukraine footage in just a little bit. So again, we do try to cover as emerging as possible, where possible, but there's going to be instances that we watch things that aren't necessarily taking place within the last 24. All right, let's move on to our next one. We're actually going to be jumping to Zaporizhzhia. And this is emerging to a certain extent. Ukraine has taken out a bridge in Zaporizhzhia near Melitopol. I'm going to show you a series of images here. Just give me a second to get them all keyed up for you. I'm going to show you a series of images here to help you understand where it is. Then we're going to see some footage of the bridge itself. Talk amongst yourselves. Turn the music back on. One more. All right, first I'm going to take you to, no, not now. I'm going to take you to the Institute for the Study of Wars map so you can understand the large-scale situation. All right, so this little dot here is the location roundabouts where this took place. It actually took place a little bit to the southeast here. But Melitopol, very well behind, Russian-held lines, still Ukrainian territory. I think that goes without saying at this point. But it's well behind Russia's lines. Now, the reports presently are that this strike was done with HIMARS. I'm going to talk a little bit about the gravity of this specific location here in just a minute. But it is along the M14 highway. Let's take a look at some of those photos of the actual bridge location. Starting with this one. So here is that bridge just on the outskirts of Melitopol as we kind of dive in here. And many props to the Kherson Cat Twitter handle for essentially calling this out. This is that specific bridge. Now the M14 highway is actually a major supply route that Russia uses for the land bridge. This being that land bridge between Crimea and the Donbass. Anything that Ukraine is able to do to disrupt Russia's ability to move manpower, equipment, combat power, regardless of what kind or flavor, in the land bridge is absolutely of priority. I've talked before about the necessity for, or in my mind, where the next focal point or area for Ukraine would be from an offensive perspective. I've talked before about that, in my mind, being Zaporizhzhia, to cut that in half, because that is a stated objective and goal. Previously, in order to get to Crimea, you would have to come all the way down and across the Kerch Bridge. But with that land bridge in place, that allows a whole lot of combat power to move back and forth from Donbass, which is connected to the more mainland Russia, to Crimea. So the Donbass being up here. Let's take a look at the video of that bridge. Stand by. And the Twitter handle is @SmartUACat. All right, that video is coming up now. I don't have any sound on it. Ukraine doesn't need any more stuff from the USA. This is what I'm about to say is an opinion, not reflective of the opinion of Funker 530. Ukraine needs as much equipment commensurate with their, or to be able to expel Russia from their territory. Exactly how much that is, I can't be certain. I thought Ukraine took Kherson back, a major portion of it, on the right bank, or excuse me, the west bank of the Dnipro. So this was supposedly conducted via HIMARS. I've got one more video that I think provides just a slightly different perspective of the bridge. Now, what's somewhat novel about this is the HIMARS isn't something you would typically turn to remove a bridge. You know, we saw that with Antonovsky. It actually took them quite a few attempts to really put a lot of damage to Antonovsky Bridge near Kherson. But this one is not in a great state right now to move really any heavy armor, even passenger vehicles. Bridges are hard to destroy. Kherson City, yes. Ukraine has taken back Kherson City. We can go back to the map and cover a little bit of that. There you go. Here's the map. Kherson City being on that right bank. Technically, it's the right bank because it's right or left bank based on downstream. So if you were standing downstream, the river flows this way. It's easier to just call it the west bank. But when I say, to a certain extent they've taken Kherson back, all of this down here is also Kherson Oblast, right? So technically speaking, there are still Russians in Kherson. Coming back up. There are a couple videos that I did not include in the stream description that were posted just after we went live, and we're going to check those out together from the homepage. Kind of show you guys how easy that is to do. This is the first one that I wanted to take a look at. Finnish Ukrainian International Legion fighter pinned down by a Russian BMP. You hear English voices there too.
I'm pinned down!
Se nyt vittu vaikka kuolisi tähän hetkeen saatana. Vittu tämäkin vielä.
Guys, thanks for all of the monetary support of the stream. We appreciate that very, very much. You know, very small team of folks here. We're 5 total people deep. If you ever wanted to, get a little bit of insight on who we've got on the team, click on your menu over here and go to our team. And it's got a little bit about each of us. I've seen some comments before. Has Funker530 ever considered sending somebody to Ukraine? Will has gone to Ukraine before. He accompanied Global Surgical and Medical Support Group to support training from a TCCC perspective, Ukrainian military. Gunslinger, thanks for the 762. It's a Clown World Christmas. Keep your powder dry, friends. Thanks very much for the 762. Blue Ridger, thanks for the $5. I heard Ukraine had built fake HIMARS. Yeah, they did. They built wooden HIMARS. Let's see if we can pull that old image up here really quick. I have it saved down somewhere. Wooden... Let's see if I can find it on Twitter really quick. But essentially, they built wooden HIMARS. That's a tactic that goes back ages, right? The Ghost Army in World War II. Operation Fortitude South used inflatables, wooden landing craft, things like that. Because from the sky, that looks... pretty similar, So thanks very much for the 5. I wasn't able to quickly find that photo. Mercado Media, thanks very much for the 5. El Russia. Ralph, thanks very much for the $2. Appreciate that. All right, let's jump into the next one here. I wanted to just cover a few things that I mentioned were posted to the webpage since we went live. The next one that we've got is footage of Chechens weaponizing a mine clearance vehicle against Russian positions. Now, most of the veterans in the chat probably know this as the Miklik. And these are Chechens that are fighting on Ukraine's side. Video is coming up for you guys now.
Сейчас они начнут. Oh, yeah!
Miguel, we do have a Discord. There is a Funker530 Discord where there's quite a bit of discussion. You guys can find a link for that in the stream description.
Теперь медленно уходим. Oh,
Diet, thank you for the $1.99. Coming up. Ronnie, if you were in Ukraine, would you want a gun chambered in 5.56 or 7.62 NATO? 7.62 NATO, so 7.62 by 5.1? Yeah, I would probably want the 7.62 by 5.1. Allahu Akbar. Yep, coming from the Chechens. What just happened? So let me provide you a little bit of context. The Miklik is essentially a mine clearance vehicle that fires this long string of explosives out, which clears a path for mines. We've seen Russia weaponizing this against Ukrainian positions in the past, but what we just watched were Chechens supporting Ukraine using it against Russian positions. It's actually a pretty amazing weapon system. All right, let's move on to our very next one. And actually, we're going to take a step out of Ukraine and back into the history books to Operation Desert Storm. Josh, I want to say, posted this one. Josh's write-up was awesome. Great way to read it. He talks about air dominance, what actual air superiority looks like. What you're going to see is an Apache just, like Josh says, chewing up Iraqi army artillery unit. This is amazing footage. Take a look at that range. Watch that range. 8,320 meters. They're not close. All right, coming back up. Now, there was one more non-Ukraine footage that I wanted to grab, and I think I was in the process of it, but I was shoving my face with my post-workout protein bar. This is the one. So what you're about to see is footage from November 6th. Kurdish guerrilla fighters near Zako, and they hit a Turkish outpost with an anti-tank guided missile. This is coming up for you guys now. November 6th of this year. You can't compare Iraqi military with Russian or American military. I think we can compare the Iraqi military quite directly with the Russian military at this point. That might be a little far, but... All right, bringing it back up. Yeah, I mean, I might be making a stretch by saying that. But we kind of dismantled the Iraqi military. There's actually a really great information operations story. One of the ones that you get taught. You get taught when you're going through and learning to become an information operations planner. You get taught a few key deception plans. And actually, that wasn't IO. That was MILDEC, military deception, and the left hook. If you guys want to read a little bit deeper into the left hook, it's a really, really great deception plan that was put in place. I'm not going to dive too far down into that because it's actually the end of our show tonight. I do need to check in on the support that's come across during the stream tonight. Thanks again, you guys, for all of the support. Just being here, dropping in the chat to let me know you're here is amazing. Thank you for the discussion. Don't pick a fight with the mods. You're going to lose that one every time, and I'm going to back them up 100%. They know not to ban you or time you out for an opinion. When you begin to attack people rather than ideas, though, that's when you can get unasked by the mods. I'm going to go over to the other side of the stream, have a beer, kick back. It's going to auto-redirect you guys over there if you want to come join me. You can complain a little bit over there, but you're going to have a bad time. I'm out of here. We'll see you on Wednesday. Sivdiv's going to be here with us. We're going to talk to him about his time in Ukraine, his time supporting the Kurds, and we're going to ask some big questions. All right? Looking forward to that. Stay informed.